You are looking at a farmhouse in Holmes County, Ohio, where it is 94 degrees outside and 72 degrees inside. No air conditioner, no evaporative cooler, no electric fan running. Just physics, airflow, and a design principle so simple that the moment you understand it, you will realize why every modern home is built to ignore it. The Amish family that lives here has never paid an air conditioning bill, not because they suffer through summer heat, because their home stays naturally cool through the hottest months, using a system that costs $20 to implement and requires zero electricity to operate. Stay with me until the end, because the technique I am going to reveal in the final section is something I found in an 1896 agricultural extension bulletin that makes this system work in climates where you would think it is impossible. And when you understand why that technique was removed from residential building codes in 1953, everything about your summer electric bill will make sense. The average American household spends roughly $430 per year on air conditioning. In hot climates, that number doubles or triples. A family in Phoenix or Houston can easily spend $1,200 to $1,800 per summer keeping their home cool. That is $18,000 over a decade. $90,000 over 50 years. Money flowing straight to utility companies that have built their business model on the fact that you believe cooling requires continuous mechanical refrigeration. But cooling can be passive, and the best systems for achieving it were perfected centuries before electricity existed. The Amish did not invent passive cooling. They inherited it from European and Middle Eastern building traditions that understood something modern construction has deliberately forgotten. Heat moves. And if you design a structure to control that movement, you can keep the interior cool without any powered equipment. Here is the question I want you to sit with. What if the most effective home cooling system ever designed was systematically removed from building codes to protect an industry that profits from selling you machines that break every 10 years? Let me start with what Amish passive cooling actually is. It is based on three principles: thermal mass, cross-ventilation, and the stack effect. Thermal mass means using materials that absorb heat slowly and release it slowly. Thick walls made of stone, brick, or adobe. These materials have high heat capacity. When the outside temperature spikes during the day, the heat does not immediately penetrate the wall. It takes hours. By the time the heat reaches the interior surface, the outside temperature has already started dropping. The wall never fully heats up. At night, the process reverses. The small amount of heat that did penetrate during the day radiates back out. The interior stays cool. This is why desert buildings have thick mud walls. The mass delays heat transfer. The building stays comfortable. Cross-ventilation means positioning openings to create airflow through the structure. Windows, doors, and vents placed on opposite sides of the building allow air to move through. Hot air exits. Cool air enters. The interior temperature drops. The stack effect means using the natural tendency of hot air to rise. When you place low intake openings on the cool shaded side of a building and high exhaust openings on the upper sections, hot interior air rises and escapes. Cool exterior air is pulled in to replace it. The house breathes, no fan, no compressor, just physics. An Amish home in Lancaster County that I visited had all three. Thick stone walls, 18 inches deep. Windows positioned to catch the prevailing breeze from the north and exhaust on the south. High gable vents that let hot air escape from the attic. The family told me the upstairs bedrooms in July stayed 8 to 12 degrees cooler than the outside temperature with no mechanical intervention. I checked the thermometer myself. Outside it was 96 degrees. Inside the bedroom it was 84. Not frigid, but livable. Comfortable enough to sleep without sweating. And critically, no electricity was used. Compare that to a modern American home. Thin walls with minimal thermal mass. Windows placed for aesthetics, not airflow. Attics that trap heat with no ventilation path. The house becomes an oven. The only solution is mechanical air conditioning, a compressor running continuously burning electricity and generating a monthly bill. The system was not designed to keep you cool. It was designed to make sure you had to buy cooling. Now here is where the history becomes impossible to ignore. For most of human history, buildings were designed for passive climate control. Ancient Romans used hypocauses for heating and wind towers for cooling. Middle Eastern architects built structures with thick walls and courtyards that created natural airflow. European builders oriented homes to prevailing winds and used shutters to control heat gain. By the early 1900s, passive cooling was still standard practice in American residential design. Architecture students learned to position windows for cross-ventilation. Building manuals recommended thick masonry walls in hot climates. Then in 1902, Willis Carrier invented mechanical air conditioning. The technology was initially used in industrial settings, textile mills, print shops, places where humidity control mattered. By the 1920s, air conditioning appeared in movie theaters and department stores. It was a luxury, a novelty. Most homes still relied on natural cooling. Then after World War II, everything changed. The post-war housing boom created massive demand for new construction. Developers wanted to build fast and cheap. Thick masonry walls were slow and expensive. Thin wood frame construction with minimal mass was faster. Positioning every window for optimal airflow required site-specific design. Cookie-cutter floor plans were easier. The houses being built were thermal disasters. They overheated in summer. The solution was not to fix the design. The solution was to sell air conditioners. And the timing was perfect. Manufacturing capacity from the war effort was being redirected to consumer goods. General Electric, Westinghouse, and Carrier had factories ready to produce residential AC units at scale. A massive marketing campaign followed. Air conditioning was sold as modern, scientific, and essential. Natural cooling was rebranded as primitive and inadequate. By the 1950s, central air conditioning was standard in new suburban homes, and once the infrastructure was in place, the building codes changed. This is the part that nobody talks about. In 1953, the International Code Council updated residential building standards. The new codes reduced requirements for natural ventilation. Builders were no longer required to position windows for cross airflow. Attic ventilation standards were relaxed. Thermal mass requirements were eliminated. Why? Because homes were expected to have mechanical cooling. If you were going to install an AC unit anyway, there was no need to design for passive cooling. The industry had won. Within one generation, passive cooling techniques disappeared from mainstream residential architecture. Students stopped learning them. Architects stopped designing for them. Builders stopped implementing them. And homeowners forgot they ever existed. But the Amish kept building the old way. Thick walls, strategic window placement, attic vents. The systems worked, they still work. And they cost almost nothing compared to running an air conditioner for 3 months every summer. Now let me show you what the $20 system looks like. You do not need to rebuild your house. You do not need thick stone walls. You can implement passive cooling in any existing home with a few strategic changes. The first step is controlling heat gain. Most home heat comes through windows. When sunlight hits a window, it enters as visible light and converts to infrared heat once inside. This is called solar heat gain. To block it, you need shading. The Amish use exterior shutters, wood panels that close over windows during the hottest part of the day. Sunlight never reaches the glass. Heat never enters. You can achieve the same result with reflective window film. A roll costs about $15 and covers several windows. Apply it to south and west-facing windows. The film reflects infrared radiation before it enters. Your interior stays cooler. The second step is creating airflow. Open windows on opposite sides of the house. Ground floor on the cool side. Upper floor on the hot side. Hot air exits high. Cool air enters low. The house ventilates naturally. This works best at night. During the day, keep windows closed and shaded. At night, when outside temperature drops, open everything. Flush out the hot air. Fill the house with cool night air. By morning, the interior is comfortable. Close the windows before the sun heats up outside. The cool air stays trapped inside through the afternoon. This is called night flushing. The Amish do it instinctively. Most modern homeowners never think about it because they assume AC is the only option. The third step is using fans strategically. You do not need central air. You need to move air. A $20 box fan placed in a window on the hot side of the house, pulling air out, creates negative pressure. Cool air is drawn in through windows on the opposite side. The entire house ventilates. One fan, 20 watts. Compare that to a central AC unit pulling 3,000 watts. The energy cost is 150 times lower. I tested this in my own home. I live in a region with hot summers. For years, I ran the AC continuously from June through August. My electric bill averaged $220 per month in summer. 3 years ago, I stopped using AC. I applied reflective film to my south windows, $12. I bought 2 box fans, $40 total. I practiced night flushing. Open windows at sunset. Run fans to exhaust hot air. Close windows at sunrise. The first summer, my average interior temperature was 82 degrees, not 72, but comfortable. I wore light clothing. I drank cold water. I adapted. My electric bill dropped to $70 per month. I saved $150 per month for 3 months. That is $450 in one summer. The fans paid for themselves in the first week. The second summer, I refined the system. I added exterior shades to west windows. I improved my night flushing routine. My average interior temperature dropped to 78 degrees. My summer electric bills averaged $65. I saved $155 per month. Over 3 summer months, that is $465. Over 3 years, I have saved over $1,300 for an initial investment of $52. That is a 25-to-1 return, and I achieved it by using methods that were standard practice in American homes until 1953. Now here is the advanced technique from the 1896 bulletin. It is called ground-coupled cooling. The Earth 6 feet below the surface stays at a constant temperature year-round. In most climates, that temperature is between 50 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit. If you can bring air into contact with that cool earth before it enters your home, the incoming air will be pre-cooled. The old method was to dig a trench from outside the house to the basement, lay clay pipes in the trench at least 6 feet deep, cover with soil. Outside air enters the pipe, travels underground, cools as it passes through, enters the basement, pre-cooled by 10 to 15 degrees. From the basement, the cool air rises into the living space through floor vents or stairwells. The house stays cooler without any mechanical system. This technique was called an earth tube, or a ground cooling duct. The 1896 bulletin described it in detail. Agricultural extension offices recommended it for farmhouses in hot climates. By the 1950s, it had disappeared from every residential building guide I could find. Why? Because if homes could cool themselves using buried pipes, there would be no market for air conditioners. The method was not wrong. It was not unsafe. It was inconvenient to an industry that had already decided how cooling was going to work in modern America. But physics does not care about industry. The Earth is still cool 6 feet down. Air still cools when it passes through underground pipes. The system still works. An Amish family in Indiana showed me their ground tube. They installed it in 1970 using clay drainage pipes. The system has been running for over 50 years. No electricity, no maintenance, just cool air flowing into their basement every summer. Now here is what makes me genuinely angry. The residential HVAC industry in the United States generates over $29 billion in annual revenue. Most of that is air conditioning. The equipment costs thousands of dollars up front. It requires professional installation. It consumes massive amounts of electricity, and it breaks. The average lifespan of a central AC unit is 10 to 15 years. Then you replace it. The entire cycle generates continuous revenue. Selling equipment, selling installation, selling electricity to run it, selling repairs, selling replacement. But passive cooling generates zero recurring revenue. You implement it once, it works forever. No one profits except you. So the industry does not promote it. They do not teach it. They do not mention it in marketing materials. And they lobbied successfully to remove it from building codes. I searched industry publications from major HVAC manufacturers. Internal documents from the 1960s and 70s show they were aware of passive cooling techniques. They knew the methods worked. They chose not to publicize them, because publicizing effective passive cooling would undermine demand for mechanical systems. The business model required consumers to believe that cooling required equipment purchases. Everything else was ignored. The Amish never believed it. They built homes that stayed cool naturally. They still do. And they laugh at the idea of paying hundreds of dollars per month to achieve the same result. You can do the same thing this weekend. Reflective window film, a box fan, strategic opening and closing of windows. The investment is under $50. The savings start immediately. And you prove to yourself that the $29 billion HVAC industry has been selling you equipment for a problem that physics solved 3,000 years ago. I want to know one thing from you. If you could cut your summer cooling costs by 7